I'm Chrissy Newton, host of Rebelliously Curious and Alien Encounters Fact or Fiction on Discovery Plus. You are now somewhere in the skies.
This is Somewhere in the Skies with Ryan Sprague.
The one and only James Fox. He is going to be talking all about his new film, Moment of Contact. You can find it on all major streaming networks. We'll give those to you in the show notes as well. I had the amazing opportunity to see an advanced screener about a month or so ago, and it was really hard to keep my mouth shut about this one. So I'm glad we have him here today. I'm going to ask him some personal questions, but more importantly, we're going to ask your listener questions today for James as well. A lot has come forward since the movie premiered. We're going to talk about that too. Without further ado, let's bring him in to talk all about Moment of Contact. James Fox, welcome back, my man.
That's such an intro. I really don't feel that I'm worthy of that. But thank you anyway.
Of course. You've been so gracious with your time. You literally just ended doing a Reddit AMA and hopped over here with us at Somewhere in the Sky. So I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you're still standing.
Gosh, well, it was lots of stuff prior to that, I can show you.
Yeah.
But hey, it's the time, and I want to obviously share my time as much as I can. I mean, this is the film coming. I mean, it's basically the result of 12 years of research on my end, and Marco Leal, my producing partner, probably 15 to 17 on his end.
It's crazy. And, we thought the phenomenon was it. You were going to be done making films. Lo and behold, you come out with this one. And I'm going to tell you, man, it hit me just as hard. We'll get into the more specifics, but this was a very human story that you decided to tell this time. Phenomenon was such a sweeping, in the best of ways, kind of overview of the entire phenomenon since the modern UFO history and before even, and very point by point, fact by fact. Here you cover one specific case in Brazil. So we really got to know the people involved and exactly what happened there or allegedly happened there. So I guess before we even, talk about kind of what the film is, can you give us kind of the overview of the Varginha case and how you got involved personally with this? I know it goes back quite a ways.
Yeah. So I'll do how I got involved first.
Okay.
And once I'll make the distinction, something that we put a tagline on it, Moment of Contact, the Roswell of Brazil. The one advantage of this case is that it happened in 1996, and the vast majority of firsthand eyewitness accounts or people are still alive, which makes it much easier to investigate. Obviously, you still had the intimidation aspect of witnesses and tampering with witnesses. So they were reluctant to want to come forward, and that took a lot of digging and a lot of work. So I was making Out of the Blue. It was in the late 90s. Funny enough, I'd heard about Rua probably maybe a year or two prior to that, and I dismissed it very quickly. And I was working on my first film, UFOs, 50 Years of Denial, on the topic of UFOs. And I had a connection to Steven Spielberg by this woman named Janet Yang. And I thought I was just naive enough to think that, Steven Spielberg was going to grant me an interview on the topic of UFOs because I'm doing a film on UFOs, And of course he said no. But he did tell Janet, hey, you should look into this case in Rua, this alleged landing case. And of course I dismissed that immediately because my whole position is like, I don't believe that you can have a mass sighting, particularly in broad daylight, and the whole world not know about it. So I just can't wrap my mind around that. So I dismissed that. Probably about 2 years later, I was working on Out of the Blue. My co-producer, Tim Coleman, coincidentally got a credit in the film, even though he didn't do anything, because he's the one who introduced me to this case. And he called me and he goes, I told you about that case in the late 90s and you laughed at me. I said, yeah, I did laugh at you. I didn't believe it. And I had a really hard time believing it, and it took me a long time. So anyway, I heard about it in the late 90s. I was making Out of the Blue. I dismissed it that fast. Didn't give it another moment's thought, didn't ask a single question, didn't read not even an article. Fast forward probably 2010, or it might have been 2011. I'm going to Brazil for I Know What I Saw. I did a film with Leslie Kane on a National Press Club event. We did it in 2007, where we flew in 14 military and government officials from 7 countries and pushing for further government transparency on the topic. I ended up making a movie about it. It's called I Know What I Saw. And I got invited to Brazil, a place called Pereira, to the south, and to give a presentation, just to join this conference. And I got a phone call from this guy, Jeff Sagansky, who's been incredibly influential behind the scenes, just high up executive in the entertainment industry. And he's just quietly been like pulling strings for me over the years. And I've been so grateful. And so I have a lot of respect for him. And he goes, "Oh, you're going to Brazil. You got to look into the Varginha case." And I was like, "Oh God, not this case." And I thought to myself, "You mean the one where the aliens were walking around the town in broad daylight?" Witness. I was like, "Sure, Jeff, I'll look into that." Click. No intentions of looking into it. I mean, that was the last I thought of it. Jumped on the plane, flew to Brazil. And at this conference, I happened to meet a couple of witnesses secondhand, some researchers. And that kind of, I guess, started to pique my interest a bit. And then since then, I've been to Brazil 4 times, roughly a month each time, digging into the case. Had boots on the ground with Marco Leal, partnered with him. And I mean, we've stuck our teeth into this case. Like I said, me, 11, 12 years, Marco, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years. I mean, long time. Marco, a long time. And he heard about it when he was a kid in Brazil. I was going to put this case in. I was going to try to squeeze it into the phenomenon. And I actually had a translator, and I'd shot in Brazil a number of times. And I edited this whole sequence together. And at the end of the day, I was like, this case is a very complex case. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of different witnesses, a lot of pieces of the puzzle. I can't do this case justice in the phenomenon. So I deleted the entire thing, and I knew Marco was going to be devastated, all the work we'd done. And I said, "Marco, I know you're not going to like to hear this, but I cut the entire case out of the phenomenon." He was like, "Oh, what do you mean? We worked so hard." I was like, "I know, but I feel like it deserves its own documentary." So that kind of got me back in the good graces with Marco again. And then I just kind of felt like unsettled business. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And at the end of the day, the fact that we waited, there were additional eyewitnesses, both civilian and military, that we managed to come forward that was unprecedented and really made the case. Found people that had vanished for 26 years, for 18 years, or 10 years, people that Marco had been working on, that knew they were part of the story, that just refused to come forward, that would confirm for Marco off the record. "Yeah, it happened. Yeah, I was there. I'm never coming forward," kind of thing. And Marco just kept working on. Bless his heart, man. Marco's a force to be reckoned with. He deserves so much credit. And all the other Brazilian UFO researchers prior to me, they deserve, they're in the credits of the movie. It speaks for itself. I could have never done this film without those guys.
Amazing. Yeah. And, that's kind of where I think this stands apart. We're so used to hearing all these stories from the U.S. You've got everything going on with the Pentagon, the Tic Tacs, the Roswell, blah, blah, blah. But then you have this extremely compelling case in Brazil, which actually has a very rich history when it comes to UFOs that a lot of people don't know about. And you do cover the history of UFOs in Brazil in a very efficient and eloquent way. I was wondering, James, would you mind kind of running us through some of those other key moments in in Brazilian UFO history for us?
Yes. So when I was with Jacques Vallée and Gary Nolan in that, what do you want to, I call it a laboratory. Jacques had all these pieces of evidence in the lab with Gary Nolan in Silicon Valley. And Jacques is walking around with the evidence like this, right? Cradling it in his lap. I said, Jacques, like, seriously? What are you? He's like, oh, like this whole time. He said, this stuff has a strange way of disappearing. And some of those bits of evidence was from Ubatuba, 1957, I believe, from Tinhas Beach. Anyway, it's in the film. Mm-hmm. According to eyewitness testimony, I guess something exploded. There were shrapnel and bits of this stuff scattered on a beach and in the water, and bits of those were recovered, and there turned out to be inexplicable, I guess, isotopes or magnesium, some form of. You have to talk to a science about this magnesium that doesn't form naturally here on Earth, apparently. So I have not personally done the analysis, but truly inexplicable so far. Mm-hmm. Then we have 1977, which went on for quite some time, commonly referred to as Operação Plato Colares incident, where you had testimony, you had joint participation with U.S. and Brazilian Air Force, tons of photographic evidence. You have objects apparently that were coming out of the water. We haven't received those photographic evidence yet. And also there were these strange objects that were shooting beams of light down at people. Quite scary. And that went on for quite some time, a year, 2 years, not sure, but a long time. Then you have UFOs 1986 over Sao Paulo, Brazil, where you had like a dozen UFOs and jets were scrambled to intercept that were picked up on radar and visually seen. And that was over Sao Paulo. And you had a press conference where the Brazilian Air Force came forward and said, these things are real. Their pilots talked about it openly. They released cockpit recordings, very, very compelling. And then 10 years later, you get this account of a UFO crash. And a week later in the town of Varginha, roughly 12 to 15 miles away, reports both from civilian and military and fire department of these strange beings, and they were captured, and then ultimately the Americans' involvement.
Right. Well, let's kind of run through the case in terms of some of the people that you interviewed. Again, the fact that you were able to track down this many people is just a testament to you, to your Brazilian researchers, and everyone. It was amazing. You were able to find these people 25, 30 years later, which is amazing. And one of those people was Carlos de Souza. This was one of the people who actually saw the craft as it was allegedly crashing. Probably one of the most powerful and emotional moments in the film for me personally, seeing this guy relive it and remembering finally where the location was. We won't go into too much detail on that, but it was very powerful, man. So could you tell us a little about Carlos and his whole involvement with all of this? So
you had witnesses in the town of Varginha, just on the outskirts of Varginha, Oralina and Eurico de Freitas, two farmers, married couple. They're middle of the night. Their animals are going bonkers, trying to figure out what's going on. They look out the window. There's this cigar-shaped object about the size of a school bus, big school bus, with a gash in the side of it. And they said there was a weird white vapor coming out the backside of it, and it was just kind of all over the place, moving very slowly, and they kept expecting it to crash. It looked like it was going to crash. They watched it for about 45 minutes. Carlos de Souza is a history professor in Sao Paulo. He was traveling from Sao Paulo to the state of Minas Gerais on the 13th. Well, he left on the evening of the 12th. He was driving late into the night, and then right around 5 o'clock in the morning at dusk, he's on the freeway. He's just, 15, 20 miles outside of Varginha. He's in the state of Minas Gerais. He's going to meet with some fellow ultralight pilots. They're going to go fly ultralights together. And that's one of the reasons why he remembers the date so well. And he sees this object in the sky, not very high off the freeway, that looked like it was in trouble. Never once did he think extraterrestrial, UFO. He didn't know. Maybe it was some kind of weird, experiment or some secret military thing. He didn't know. But he saw it like it was going down, and it went down, and he didn't actually see it hit the ground, but he saw it where it was unequivocally going to hit the ground. I mean, it went down, and he didn't see the actual impact, but he saw. So he turned off the freeway. He drove up to this farm called Maiolini Farm, and he comes upon a debris field, at least the size of a football field, if not larger, of scattered metallic metal debris. And a large section of the cigar-shaped object, metallic, still intact. There's nobody there. He's thinking, God, whoever was flying that thing, they're in trouble. There are probably people that are hurt. What can I do to come help? He jumps out of his car. He picks up one of these pieces of metal that were scattered everywhere. He said it was about maybe this big. And he said he could crumple it in his hands. He said it was so light that you could barely feel it in your hands. And he crumpled it up. And when he released it, it regained its form, which was fascinating. And just as this was happening, and he said the smell was almost buckled his knees of ammonia and sulfur. He grabbed his shirt and he held his shirt over his mouth like this, and he was trying to breathe, and his eyes were watering. He said it was the strongest thing he'd ever smelled in his life. Just as this was happening, military trucks from the opposite direction that he had driven into Maiolini Farm came from the military base Eza. And they pointed rifles at him, ordered him to leave. And I'm just giving you the truncated version. He freaked out. He never thought, again, he wasn't thinking like he didn't know what was going on. He didn't have time to process. He gets in the car, he takes off, he gets a few miles down the road. He's trembling. He's trying to process what happened. He goes to this cafe, gas station, gets out, and he has a coffee. He's getting some gas. He comes out of the coffee shop, and then this unmarked vehicle, like a black, dark blue or black Opala, he calls it, American vehicle, pulls into with two men in suits, no license plates, and basically threatened him. You didn't see anything. Your name is Carlos de Souza. You live here. This is your wife's name, your children. If you talk about what you saw, things are going to get really weird. And that's kind of what he gave one statement on camera a couple months later to a guy named Claudio Covo, who's a Brazilian UFO researcher, as well as an engineer. And he gave one on-camera statement, then he vanished for 26 years. Excuse me. So I remember telling, we had a small clip of Carlos's testimony from 1996. It was grainy and deteriorated and just unusable, quite honestly. The audio was diabolical. And fortunately, with the help of fellow Brazilian UFO researchers, his daughter, Cynthia Covo, we were able to open up his archives and get access to that original interview that he'd done 26 years later. Marco and some other Brazilian researchers, because I said to Marco, we don't have a story if we don't have Carlos. We've got to find this guy. So they found him, and they ultimately convinced him to come forward for the first time in 26 years, and it's all on camera with us.
Yeah, very, very powerful moment for sure. One of the other people that you met, which was very surprising, was the mayor of Varginha. Like, talk about officialdom with this case. Tell us what that was like.
Couldn't believe it. We walk up. I'm going, Marco, you're saying that the current mayor Verge, the current guy, not retired, the current guy, we're going to go into the mayor's office, with police and everything around. Yes, he's going to, and I didn't know what he was going to say, but to have the mayor of Varginha confirm the case that he believes it happened, that there was a cover-up, was a first time, as far as I know, first time in history. Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty incredible. Just to hear him say, yes, we take this very seriously. Something happened. The military was involved. And it's become such a big part of the culture in Varginha. I mean, look at the town hall. Look at these saucer-shaped buildings. It reminds me so much of like the
Incredible.
McDonald's in Roswell, right?
Crazy,
The
right?
flying saucer. Yeah.
You remember in Roswell, they've got these signs at hotels that say, "Come crash with us."
Yeah. Yeah.
So funny. It's so silly.
It's pretty cool. Well, I mean, gosh, the chat is going nuts here. Everyone wants to ask you about the photos, the videos. We'll get there, guys. We will get there.
Yeah.
We've got a couple super chats here, so thank you guys. Really appreciate that. Love the film, James. Who has the video? We'll get there. Let's talk about, because I do want to get to these listener questions, James. Kind of the next pivotal part of the film, at least for me, and that was the three women.
Yes.
They become sort of iconic with this case as witnesses to not the craft, but one of the creatures. We must stress, apparently there's more than one creature, one dead, one alive, and supposedly they saw the alive one. So would you mind telling us a little about these three women and what it was like speaking to them?
Going from left to right at the top, you've got Valkyria. She was 14 at the time. This is January 20th, 1996, roughly 3 to 3:30 in the afternoon. In the middle, you've got Liliani, and you've got and Liliani and Valkyria, the one in the middle and one on the left. They're sisters, 14 and 16, and then you've got Katya on the far right. She's 21 years old at the time of the incident. They were taking a shortcut through a little field. There was a cinder block wall with some graffiti on it. They were noticing, walking through the kind of tall grass. Mm-hmm. The picture below is the exact location where this incident took place 26 years prior. In fact, the picture above is probably pretty close to it too. And they see what they initially were looking at, this thing that was kind of frozen. It was in this position. I don't know if you can see me in the field. Well, there you go. You can see the drawing right there. It's sitting against the cinder block wall, just like that, except it's not looking at them. It's looking down. And it wasn't moving. They thought, what on earth are we looking at? And one of the girls let out a kind of like a yelp, and at which point the creature, the being, whatever you want to call it, turns its head and makes direct eye contact with the girls. Liliani grabs her sister, Valkyria, who's 14, and yanks her out of there, and they run. Okay? This is after a brief moment of eye contact. Katya, who's 21, remains frozen between 8 and 10 feet away from this being, locked eyes on it. Okay? The two other girls, the sisters, run away. They get about 60 to 100 feet away, realize that they'd left Katya behind. So Liliani turns back, who's 16, and runs and grabs Katya. Now, when I was speaking to the girls in the field at the exact location where this encounter occurred, I said, when you locked eyes on this being, during that moment of contact, then I thought to myself, now, wait a minute. That's a good title. Put me there. I want to be there. I want you to put me in that place. What did you feel? What did you see? Was there any communication? I want to be there. And that's when she said, it was telling me that it was scared. It was feeble, weak, scared, and it wanted help. And then when Liliani grabbed her by the arm and yanked Katya out of there, and they ran off and they went home to the mother of the two sisters and told her, we think we saw the devil. They never said E.T., never said alien. We think we saw the devil. And so the mother's like, let's go back. And the two sisters were like, we are not going back. And Katya didn't want to go back either. She ultimately convinced Katya to going back. They jumped in this truck and they drove back to the location. The stench was there. There were footprints of this creature, which she describes in great detail and even draws for us. But the creature was gone.
Man, yeah, it's quite a story they have to tell. I love this idea, too, of it not being alien. You know, it really is like the lens in which you view the experience. If you're religious, maybe you would look at it as demonic, especially with those red eyes, which is very unique in these cases. You know, otherwise it looks kind of like a gray, except it's a brownish color, but those those deep red eyes just really, really catch you off guard.
So
for
crazy.
sure.
I've never heard an account of anything like it, before. And especially like you think about an encounter, and I knew that my credibility would take a hit, and I get it. Like I totally understand people's reluctance. I'm not out here trying to, convince anyone of something. I totally get it. But I'm hearing people like, oh, you're saying it's an alien, and how do you know it's extraterrestrial? I'm like, did I say that? I've not said that. All I'm doing is providing a platform where the witnesses can share what he or she saw. That's it. You can draw your own conclusions. I wasn't there. I don't know what it was. I can conclude maybe it was in a spacecraft and connect the dots. But we're not making any conclusions here. We're not making any definitive statements, any conclusions. It appears to be consistent with a UFO crash and beings recovered. That's what appears to have happened. But until we have further and a capture, I'm convinced that something got captured. There was something out there that was captured. In fact, the military witness, Military X, called it. It was explained to him that it was supernatural.
Right.
Something supernatural. I don't know why that always stuck in my head. Supernatural. He didn't say E.T. He didn't call it a creature. He just called it supernatural.
Yep. That gave me shivers. Military X. Let's go there, James. A lot of images here. This was the other big part of the movie. A really interesting journey you guys took. And this is with Marco Cherisi.
Yes.
The kind of tragic story in this entire affair. An officer who supposedly died from this event.
He definitely died.
Yeah,
and most definitely died from this event. So,
can you kind of run us through the people we're looking at here?
You see the military man with the hat, with the what do you call it, the helmet?
Mm-hmm.
That his name is Marco Cherisi. He and another gentleman, right around 5:00 p.m., which is roughly 2 hours. It could have been 5:30, but it's right around 5:30 p.m. the same day, January 20th. 2 or 3 blocks away from where the girls stated that they encountered this strange creature. Okay, he's on patrol with a guy named Eric Lopes, who's also a military officer, police officer, and Marco Cherisi. Eric Lopes is behind the wheel. Marco's in the passenger seat. They're on the lookout for something unusual. That's all they knew. Not that a UFO crashed, not that there's an alien running around, something unusual. They see something come across the front of their car. Eric Lopes slams the brakes on. Marco jumps out, grabs this thing with his bare hands, didn't put up much of a fight. It was weak. Puts it on his lap in the back seat. Off they go. They initially went to a clinic. Apparently the doctor came out and said, I don't know what the heck that thing is. Get it out of here. And then they went to a regional hospital, and that's where they dropped it off. And Marco apparently had this oily stuff all over his body, and he got rubbing alcohol. And apparently he was rubbing alcohol, trying to clean himself of this oily, sticky smell that was on him. He got a little gash. It's speculated, but it's probably the case that he got it when he captured this thing. Just a little cut. And he got an infection. Within a few weeks, he went to the ER. The doctor did everything he could to save him. Dr. Cesario, that we interviewed on camera, you see in the with the white shirt next to him on the top right, and he died. He said he had a complete immune system failure. He threw the kitchen sink at him. Nothing was responding. He'd never seen anything like it 25 years prior or 26 years after. And, we have the death certificate of Marco Cherisi. We did an interview with the doctor who confirms that he felt that he really was involved. He did encounter this thing, and that he revealed certain aspects of the story because in an effort to have transparency with the doctor who's trying to save his life, he was telling him the truth. And Dr. Cesario talks a little bit about that on camera. But then we interview Marco's sister, who's Marta Tavares, who's down holding the photograph of her brother. and the death certificate. And she explained to us, she asked her brother while he was lying in the hospital, not like a day or so away from dying, is this story true? Did you really grab this extraterrestrial thing or being? And he said to her something to the order of, this is going to be one of the biggest stories, and there's lots more that's going to come out. And then he died. And then Marco Teresi's mother, also Marta Tabaro's mother, had a visit, according to her daughter, on camera from the military, Brazilian military, who said that, confirmed that it did happen, and that if the truth came out, society would collapse. And that's the justification that they gave the mother of the deceased soldier who died.
Greetings, everyone. Ryan Sprague here, host of Somewhere in the Skies. For over 7 years and more than 400 episodes, the Somewhere in the Skies podcast has always been free to listen to, but it's not free to create. So we offer several ways to help support our efforts and get rewards in return. If you listen to the podcast on Apple, you can click the subscribe button at the top of your Somewhere in the Skies feed to become a premium Apple subscriber. Or you can join our Patreon campaign with several tiers available. Both of these options give you the same benefits and rewards: ad-free episodes, early access to the main show, and bonus episodes and content. Help keep the lights on at the Somewhere in the Skies HQ, and help us continue to grow by becoming a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/somewhereskies, or by clicking the subscribe button at the top of your Apple feed. Thank you for your continued support, and keep looking up. A cautionary tale in so many respects, too. I mean, it's crazy. What about Military X? I know this is, we won't give away too much. It is a very compelling part of the film as well. But who was this and how was he involved, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so he'd been a target for 26 years. Let's see what I can reveal here. I'm just trying to see here. There were a number of witnesses who worked with Brazilian UFO researchers and ultimately gave an on-camera statement right after the incident that was never to be released. It was an insurance policy that if anything happened to those witnesses, those taped evidence would be released to the general public. And those, and I had seen those, I'd seen that taped evidence, and I desperately was trying to get my hand. I understood why it wasn't to be released, and it was very frustrating as a researcher myself and a filmmaker that here I have this stuff. A friend of mine has it in his possession, and we can't use it. So this military person had been on our radar for some time, but it was impossible to reach. And when Marco Leal finally did reach him, oh my God, it's like the scene out of a movie, how the whole thing went down. He was paranoid that Marco was intelligence coming after him to find out what he. And long story short, I think it took 8 months, 9 months, 10 months just to get a meeting with him. They met. And then and he kept saying, when we came to Brazil, Marco Leal kept reaching out to him, and he kept saying, no, I'm never coming forward. No, I'm not going to happen. All the money in the world, not going to happen. No. And then I said, let's just maybe we can just see if we can go meet with him. And to our surprise, he agreed to do that. And we met at one location. Then he got in our car, took us to another location, and we came out. He had somebody with him, and we talked just about life in general. Talked a little bit about my father, my career a little bit. And then we talked very briefly about the incident. And then that was it. Didn't agree to go on camera, none of that. And then a couple days later, we kept kind of following up, and he started to think about it. And it was like, maybe. And he was having some troubles anyway at home. And I think we probably had maybe a 2-hour window where he was like, okay, I'll do this. He's terrified that, that window is going to close and they're going to get cold feet. But we took our chances. We drove 4 hours and went, and it was all just totally up in the air. I mean, the whole thing was so precarious, It's like we're going up there. We didn't have a meeting place. He was like, I'm not going to meet you in any public place at all. If I'm seen with any Americans or any cameras, my life is over. Like, he was so paranoid about it. So I was like, well, gosh, why don't we just get a hotel room, and then he can just walk into the hotel room. And we snuck in all of our gear to the hotel room, and at any moment thinking that if he arrived and we were trying to take our gear in, that we had it all hidden with blankets and towels, and we're trying to get our gear in. And we go up to the guy at the hotel. It's like 2:00 in the afternoon. And he's like, yeah, can I help you? And we're like, yeah, you got a hotel room. He's like, yeah, sure. I got this room. I got that room. We'll take it. Well, don't you want to know the price? No, we'll take it. How about this side? No, we'll take it right now. How do we do it? And he was looking at us like, okay.
Interesting. What do you got under those towels there, man?
He's just like unloading the cars with all this gear, with like towels over the gear and pillows.
Oh, no.
Walking into the place. I'm not telling you, I'm not kidding. That guy was looking at us like, what the hell are they doing in there? Honestly, in the back of my mind, I was thinking he probably thought we were going to shoot a porno in there.
Hey, you said it. I wasn't going to say it, but
I just, the look on the guy's face, I was like, we don't have time to talk. I had minutes before this other guy, this witness, was going to show up. Right. And if he saw us out there with all the gear, I know he was going to turn around and leave. So we're racing to get all the stuff in there. And then I'm hearing, Dave, my DP, and he's going, James, these cameras the lenses are too long. We can't, this room isn't big enough. Like, I just said, yeah. Dave, I said, work it out, dude. Just figure it out.
Figure it out.
Like, this
Welcome
is it.
To filmmaking.
It's happening now, And then the guy comes, and it was the most incredible experience of my life.
Yeah, very, very powerful.
How many people do you know that allegedly drove what could be an alien around? I mean, because I don't know.
I can't name one. No, it's crazy.
And I mean, look, that's what I believe that happened. Can I prove it? No. Am I going to sit there and scream from the hilltops? That's what happened? No, of course not. But I absolutely believe his testimony. In fact, I believe everyone's testimony. And not one person came to us. We dug, again, I can't give enough praise to the fellow Brazilian UFO researchers, particularly Marco Leal, my producing partner. This film wouldn't exist without their decades long efforts. And again, no witnesses came to us. It was such a challenge. Every one of them, years.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Well, and talk about like seeking people out. We won't give away. This is probably the most dramatic part of the film. But you ran into some actually some trouble in trying to interview one of these people, life-threatening, if I may say so. Anything you want to share on that, James? If not, if you want to leave it to the viewers, I get it. But
I have no problem sharing. What I can share is Marta Tavares, seen here down in the middle with holding up the two photographs, the one death certificate and her brother. Mm-hmm. She kept saying to me, even back in 2014, Eric Lopes. He's the only living survivor of the second capture with my brother in the car. The family couldn't get a statement from him. All the researchers couldn't get a statement from him. He had gone completely dark for 26 years. He was the last living person, the only living person that was witness to the alleged second capture with Marco Teresi, which ultimately led to his death. I kept asking since 2013, like, why can't anybody find this guy? Like, where is he? So we asked the mayor. This guy's got access. He's got power. Hey, he said, if there's anything I can do to help you out, let me know. I said, yeah. Can you find this guy, Eric Lopes? A couple days later, he found him. So I met, and the mayor didn't come, but the mayor connected us with, he was a former police sergeant, and the police sergeant's son, who's now a lawyer, used to be a politician in Varginha. When we were standing down in the town square, or just outside the town square, cars were driving by, waving, beeping, honking. The guy was famous everywhere in Varginha. Homolo. And they met with us, gave us a brief interview on camera, and they said, we will escort you to Eric Lope's house. From there, you guys take it over. Getting in our cars, we're all ready to go. We're going to follow this black Mercedes. And kind of the last minute, I don't know, I always listen to this little voice in my head, you know. It's like, you know what? You better stop, wait a minute, just take a pause, jump out with the translator and tell Homolo, ask Homolo, would he mind actually not just dropping us off at this guy's house, but actually escorting us up to his front door. At which point he said, yeah, I was literally did it in the middle of the road. Like we were just about to leave. And I jumped out and I asked him, and he said, yes, he would. Thank God he did. I honestly believe that there's a high probability that I probably would have been shot just walking up there by myself without him. Because he was threatening to shoot everybody multiple times. And the crazy part is that nobody at the time, it was kind of a chaotic moment. Nobody translated in the field what was happening, what this guy was saying. Like bullets are about to start flying, that kind of thing. And he was leaning up in the window, looking down on us. And I was just trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Like, who was this guy? Was this Eric Lopes? Was it not Eric Lopes? You know, Dave, the cameraman, was trying to zoom his camera into the guy's face, but he had the wrong lens. But the guy kept looking at Dave like this. Like, don't film me. Yeah. Doing this to Dave. And then he was telling everyone he's about to get shot, which I found out later. Well, I'm looking at this guy's face that you don't see in the scene. And I look at this face and I said to myself, I've never seen a face like this before. Not the bone structure, not the skin color, but the tension, and I've yet to find a word to describe it. If you can imagine someone harboring something so extraordinary, such a deep, deep secret, and the toll that had on him, that's what it looked like. When I saw his eyes and I looked at his face, it was like, oh my God, I've never seen a face like this before. Like, you could tell, like he's had this burden on his shoulders, some deep, dark secret. Then you could see it in his face. That's all I can say, man. You could see it in this guy's face. Wow. And he said to us as we walked up, and again, I didn't realize this at the time. If you're here to talk about the ET, you know, he's never going to say anything. He referred to himself in the third person and then he kept talking about bullets are going to start flying. We're going to kick you out of here with bullets. And then I kept saying, like, you know, will Eric Lopes ever give a statement? Will he ever talk to anybody? Will he ever give a statement, kind of thing? And then he says, I am Eric Lopes. And you guys are about to get in some serious trouble right now. Yeah. And I remember I looked over at Homolo, and Homolo had his 8-year-old son standing next to him, 8, 9, 10 years old. And Homolo looked at me and he went, terminado, like that. And the look, even though I don't speak Portuguese and he doesn't speak English, that look to me, let's get the F out of here, and we get the F out of here right now. Yeah. I was like, okay, let's go. You know, and off we went.
Crazy. Yeah. Again, just harboring these things for so long. This is what the military and government in Brazil did to these poor people. And, you know, it's shades of Roswell, again, threatening people and telling them, we know everything about your family. We could bury you out, you know, in the Brazilian wilderness and no one will ever find you, that sort of thing. It's crazy, man. You even have archival footage of, I believe it was one of the higher ups in the Brazilian, either Air Force or Army, saying, like, we will not comment further on this. We're not hiding anything.
Can you believe the archival footage that we found?
It was crazy, yeah. Talking about this event. I didn't know that existed.
Does that not speak volumes? Just looking at that guy?
Oh, he was lying through his teeth. I mean, you can tell.
No question, man.
Yeah.
No question. Yeah, I know. You got to see it in the film, guys. You got to see it in the film.
I
got the goosebumps. Just like the whole thing, man. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. And it was the only time in production where I got a little spooked in Texas when I was meeting with Ricky Sorrells during the that case of, I think it was 2008 at Stephenville, Texas. Ricky Sorrells was being harassed by the military. Stop talking about what you saw, that kind of thing. We were trying to get an interview with Ricky Sorrells at the time, and we saw like unmarked, like vehicles pull into his drive. You know, I got a little spooked then. Ricky was spooked. That was it. Only time. This time, we were all spooked. We were all spooked. That was pretty scary. Mm-hmm. And then we were about to meet with other additional witnesses or witnesses that we had just met with. And that's when the military base, EZA, which is the base of operations for this whole thing, that's when they started making phone calls, according to the people that we're about to meet with. And they said, steer clear of us, disappear, don't come near us. And it was like creepy phone calls, like, hey, how you doing? So-and-so, won't say their name. How you doing? You still living at this address? How's the family? And yeah, we understand there's a American documentary film crew. Have we reached out to you? Did you meet with them or talk with them at all? Huh? Okay. All right. Well, anyway, we wish you well, and yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm sure. Wow,
that's crazy, man. Yeah, not like don't meet with them, or not like we're going to harm you. No, none of that. Just read between the lines. We're aware. Stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, hey, I've got some listener questions if you're willing to stick around.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I just got.
All right, I won't keep you too long.
I'm on a podcast. Give me 1 sec.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm going to get my listener questions here together, guys. If you do have a question for James, please feel free to put it in the chat here, guys. Super chats, super stickers are open if you want to help out the show. I've got a couple of those starred here. We've got a couple from our Patreon members and from Twitter. So again, James answered some of these in a Reddit AMA earlier today, guys. So I would highly suggest going over there and checking that out if you haven't yet. But yeah, James, our first listener question comes from Diego, one of our Patreon subscribers, and he wants to know, in your opinion, James, with everything going on in the disclosure process, how soon do you think acceptance of ETI will reach the majority of the general population? You think we're close?
You know, it's a very good question. I just know that I got a call from one of my, kind of insider people who said, you have no idea your timing on this film. I said, what do you mean? Just sit tight. You have no idea your timing on this film. And I'm thinking to myself, well, the film is about an alleged UFO crash and bodies recovered. So is there a statement coming out that's going to confirm potentially these types of cases? They didn't tell me, but I'm eagerly, anticipating, but I'm also acutely aware that we are pushing the envelope here, and we're implying that the United States was involved. I'm not implying. The military people and the flight control officers in Brazil, they're the ones that told us the Americans were involved. I didn't know. Right. I had no idea. In fact,
I didn't even touch on that. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I asked, well, what happened after this? You dropped it off here. Then what happened? SpaceX military base in Campinas. You went from the town of Varginha, then you went to EZA military base, and then EZA military base the next day to SpaceX military base in Campinas. Then what happened? It's like, oh, we did a study and the Americans flew in and took it all. Really? And then we talked to the flight control people that said they had confirmation that a United States Air Force plane flew in on the 22nd of January, which is the exact time they dropped it off at Campinas, and a United States Air Force without authorization from the Brazilian government lands in Campinas. Pretty compelling stuff to me.
Do you think we're going to find out more about America's involvement in this case?
Look, man, in the last couple of days, 2 people have come out of the woodworks confirming this case and photographic evidence of this case, and more is coming out. I guarantee you it's coming. I know it is, because people are like, the hell with it. I've been sitting on this for 26 years. This is potentially the biggest story since Roswell. and I don't care anymore.
Okay. Well, let's go there then. You mentioned photographic evidence. People are saying there's video of this, photographs. Have you seen any of this? Will we ever see it? What do you think, James?
I think the likelihood of us seeing it is high. I have spoken directly with 3 people that I have zero doubt they're telling me the truth, that have seen it. I'll say something hypothetically here in vivid detail, that just because you locate something, it doesn't necessarily mean you can get your hands on it, even with a large dollar, reward. And the compensation is strictly because there's high level of risk involved. There's people out there that have just eyewitness testimony that they're terrified. Can you imagine eyewitness testimony coupled with hard evidence like that? How terrified you'd be? So believe me, we're working on it. Believe me, we are working on it. And believe me, there's no one on the planet that wants this more than I do.
I love that. And hey, we've got the UAP report coming out next week of all things as well. So who knows where that's going to lead and who else that might empower or inspire to come forward with their involvement in this case or many others. So, hey, that's all I need. You're giving us hope, man. Yeah. Well, okay. So Nathan on Twitter asks, this is a good one. Going back to kind of Colores and a lot of the earlier cases in Brazil, any idea why Brazilian UFOs seem to be particularly violent? Why are these UFOs in Brazil crashing? Why are they trying to shoot down planes? What do you think? What makes Brazil like such a violent place for UFO encounters? Any thoughts or theories on that?
Look, Colores, a couple of cases and a couple of incidents in Colores with these beams of light tagging people. For me, it's the only time I've heard of those cases. I have not heard of the UFOs shooting down any planes in Brazil. The 1986 encounters over Sao Paulo, I guess the night of UFOs over Brazil, commonly referred to. It's 1986. It was not a hostile encounter. The airplanes that were scrambled to intercept did not get shot down. There was no hostility exhibited. The pilots just said we were unable to get these things. There is testimony coming out now that we're the ones that shot at the UFO that crashed. That gash it had in the side. I'm not stating this because I don't know, but some Brazilian UFO researchers who've been digging into this case since 1996 are claiming that the Americans shot at it.
Oh, interesting. That's why we were
get more
involved.
information on that. But these are people that would have access to high-level Brazilian military. I can confirm that are stating that it was known that the Americans are the one that shot at it because it had a huge. According to the eyewitnesses, it had a huge gash in the back of it. It was in trouble, and it had white, weird vapor coming out the back of it, not like a smoke from a fire. White.
Interesting. Yeah. Again, that right there could explain why America was involved. It reminds me of the Tehran UFO incident. You're like, why did the U.S. get so heavily involved? And it's because we were leasing our planes to Tehran at the time, and we wanted to know what was outmaneuvering our own planes up there. So it would make sense if America was the one to shoot this thing down, and why they would become involved and why they had carte blanche the minute they got on Brazilian territory.
I would love some Americans that were involved to come forward. My fingers are crossed. Hey, look, you know what? This is the first step. This documentary is the first step of highlighting this case in the United States and around the world like it's never been highlighted. I mean, there have been other very little reporting on this case in America. Most seasoned researchers know very little about this case, myself included,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same. I knew the basics like every other UFO researcher. Mm-hmm. Creature, red eyes, something crashed. That's it. There's a UFO in the middle of the town. End of story. And then here you come with an hour and 40 minutes of witnesses and military. And I'm just like, holy shit, man. This thing goes way deeper than I ever thought. It's crazy. Ugh.
I know.
Wow. Well, okay. Last listener question from the people I have here that submitted beforehand, James. Let's see here. Why does James think UFOs travel so far to basically crash on Earth? Tony asks this. It feels like they crash here more frequently than airplanes. Yeah, why do you think all these things are crashing if they're so highly advanced? Again, we did touch on maybe it was shot down, but in general, why do you think the UFOs crash?
I personally have not researched that many UFO crashes.
Yeah.
And I have no idea how many crashes there have been or haven't been. I have no idea where these things come from. I have no idea if they're interplanetary. I have no idea if they're interdimensional. I have no idea if they're time travelers. I have no idea what they are or where they come from. And I have no idea why they crashed or why they crashed. And I have no idea how many credible cases there are. Because I've done some research into Roswell, and I've done pretty extensive research into Varginha. And that's it. I mean, I've heard of other cases, but I don't know anything about them. Certainly nothing I can comment on intelligently.
That's fair. That's fair, man.
This
is pretty cool.
I wish I could give you a better answer, man. I just don't know.
No. We'd rather get your honest answer than, I know everything about every UFO crash. That's the last thing we need in this field. Let's be completely honest. This is really cool.
In fact,
I know nothing.
I know less today than I did 30 years ago.
Yeah, excuse me. Safest answer you could give for sure. Where did I see this comment? This is pretty cool. Hold on. Oh, here we go. Literally just watched the movie last night with my dad. We're both Jameses, by the way. We enjoyed it. I love hearing that. Like families are watching this film together. I dream of the day like I finally have a kid and I can sit him down and put him through your entire portfolio of films and be like, this is where we were at in in 2022, and then see what a brave new world it is then. But yeah, pretty cool.
Oh yeah, thank you. I love hearing accounts. I've said this before, and I will continue saying this. I really hope people realize that I'm not out there trying to get people to join my cult. Like you must believe. I really hope people know that about me. I'm fascinated. I'm curious. I like to ask lots of questions. I'd like to get more answers. And I share my investigations publicly through my documentaries. And that's it. I feel like people are entitled to this information. I feel like people, like myself included, have not been, like the governments have not been transparent, and quite the opposite. And I feel like, if true, it's one of the most significant events of the 20th century, 21st century too. I mean, 20th century, huge. I mean, I don't know. Look, if it was, I tell people, forget about whether it happened or it didn't happen. If it did happen, how significant of an event would this be? Just if it did. And everyone's like, oh my God, this would be huge. It'd be the story we've all been waiting for. Well, I'm kind of convinced that it did. So, hopefully more people will come forward and validate and substantiate these claims.
Absolutely. And we're going to give your email address at the end here for anyone, if you happen to be listening or watching and have any further information on this case, please reach out to James. Again, you're one of these filmmakers who, once the film's out, your work isn't done. You continue to investigate, and you continue to update us. I know you have plans on releasing some exclusive content related to this case as well. At least that's what I've heard, the rumors. But the last listener question, James, I want to ask you here is, you've made this claim on several interviews and whatnot, and I'd be curious too. Can you expound upon walking among us? You've said this in a couple interviews in the past, that you think it's possible there could be ETs walking among us. Is this something you believe, or is this something you've heard from people you've interviewed?
I knew that kind of got away from me a little bit. No, I don't believe it. I don't not believe it, but I'd have to see some evidence. I'm just sharing my time with Robert Bigelow. And I had lunch with him back in, I think it was like 2009. It might have been 2010 at the latest. It was right after I finished my film, I Know What I Saw. And he invited me to have lunch with him. excuse me, I'm drinking this bubbly, sparkling water, and it's like,
Ooh, yum.
Anyway, whatever.
I love those.
Do. And he was the one that talked about the studies that had been done. This is what he was telling me. I'm not saying I believe it or I don't believe it. It's what he's telling me. And I think Bigelow would be in a better position than I am to make these statements. He was saying that they've done some studies and that they determined the level of impact that this story would have if they had full disclosure, yada, yada, yada. And he said that, the economy would collapse and religions would collapse. And do you have any idea what, and I was like, he goes, and then he said, they're walking among us. What exactly he meant by that? I don't know what, do I believe it? No. Have I seen evidence of it? No. Do I think it's impossible? No. I believe that these things are piloted. They're under intelligent control. Is it possible? I guess it's possible, but I don't believe it just because he said it. And I've shared that story and people are like, James thinks they're walking among us. No, I don't. That's not what I think. This is what I was told from Robert Bigelow.
Awesome. Thank you for clearing that up. I think that put a lot of people's minds at ease. They're like, he's losing it. James is losing it.
No, I don't believe that.
But at the same time, when someone like Bigelow says something like that, like people stand up and listen. They're like, what?
I can't sit there and say definitively that's not the case. I have seen zero evidence to suggest that's the case. However, one thing I've learned in this field is you can't eliminate every time I say this is impossible, I've been proven wrong. So I'm going to leave it 0.0000001% and say maybe, but I don't believe it.
Fair enough. I love it. Last thing I want to touch on before we let you go here, James. We've got right here, the movie had a big screen. What would you call it? Premiere, debut? You finally got to see your film on the big screen. I know something you wanted with the phenomenon.
So exciting. Like the highlight.
Tell us about it, yeah.
Robert Salas showed up. He was like my hero. And he showed up, and it was, Donnie, who's been Donnie Chang, he's been an executive producer on The Phenomenon. He's been kind of behind the scenes, keeping things alive during The Phenomenon, because that went through a whole, oh my God, I won't bore your audience with the details, but there were times when I was completely broke and people were coming after me and we were parting ways and had.
It was rough. I remember, yeah.
Very rough.
And the text from you being like, I don't think I can go on.
Oh, I don't even like talking about it. Anyway, we got through it. And then Donnie is also an executive producer on this film, one of the executive producers. And we found out through 1091 that there was not going to be a premiere. And Donnie's like, what do you mean there's not going to be a premiere? And this other guy who's also an executive producer, and he was like, what are you talking about? How can we not have a premiere? We got robbed from The Phenomenon. Here we've got this golden opportunity. What do you mean we're not having a premiere? And I said, well, there's no budget, blah, blah, blah. And then this other guy, Percy T, who I don't know if there's a photograph of him down here or not. He had organized some screenings of The Phenomenon in Memphis through Regal and all of these other cinema chain. But COVID was happening. It was just very, very difficult. And he found out that we were not having a premiere and he was all upset. And so long story short, Percy T gets the theater. He secures LA Live Theater. It's a long story, but we secured it. Then Donnie finds out, we got the theater. Well, we have to go all out. We got to have pizzazz. We got to have the red carpet, and we got to have, and so, I said, Donnie, I don't have the bandwidth. I can't do it. I've got so much other things going on. I said, you take the reins and you organize it. And so he made this fun at pizzazz. He had the red carpet, he had the backdrop, he had the lights and the cameras, and he had some women dressed in these fun suits, and we had the after party, and it was just fun. It was just fun. And it was a big celebration. It was the first time in my life I ever got a premiere like that. It was a huge screen in LA. My God, the sound system was phenomenal. Just to see the whole thing on a big screen, and very nicely attended, and some nice Q&A at the end of it. And then we went to an after party, which was just a few blocks down the street, and it was just tons of fun, man. It was just fun and a celebration.
Right. Which again, like I think people forget, this is a very serious case, and a lot of UFOs is very serious. But if you can't have a good time, like what the hell's the point? Honestly, you're talking about such weird shit. Like you gotta laugh at it.
I could not agree more. You know, look, if you listen to the end credits of the movie, there's this very serious witness. And I'm like, hey, do you think that smell would make a very good perfume?
Yeah, that one got me.
With laughter. It was like, you know what? If you can't have a little fun and be lighthearted, a little bit of levity and fun, what's the point, man? You know?
What's the point? I love that. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Well, James, I mean, dude, you continue to knock it out of the park. I mean, this film, again, a lot different from the phenomenon, took a very human approach, which is something I personally appreciate as someone who exclusively interviews witnesses in the aftermath of an event on their life. That's what you covered. Some of these people didn't talk for 27 years, and then they unload on you. And it's just like, I think it was even Carlos in the film, like, he was like, James, thank you. He's like, you have no idea the weight that's been lifted off of me. That's beautiful.
His brother lives in New Jersey, and his brother told me he speaks fluent English. He moved here years ago, and he said, you know, I didn't believe my brother. None of us really did. We all kind of made fun of him. And I said, well, your brother was a witness to an extraordinary event, and he's been shouldering that for all this time. And imagine just disappearing and just wanting it to go away.
Yeah.
And just you can't take the laughter, the ridicule, you know what I mean? I mean, I understand where it comes from, but just imagine having to like live with that.
Yeah. And you and I have interviewed hundreds of people who've held that in for so long. And then when they finally get it off their chest and realize, oh, I'm not the only one. Like, I mean, for Carlos, it's enough to see that other people witnessed the craft and saw creatures. Like, that's enough for him to be like, okay, like I didn't misidentify this. Something truly anomalous happened, and it's being covered up by our government in Brazil. So again, just the vindication you gave to a lot of different people in the film, I think is closure enough for many of them. At least I hope so.
Well, I was told that when they had the screening, they had a couple of premieres in Brazil, that a lot of the researchers and the witnesses were bawling their eyes out at the end of it.
Yeah.
Just waiting so long for that vindication, waiting so long for that cooperation. You know, when someone's corroborated by other witnesses, that lends credibility, credence to their testimony. You imagine what a relief that would be.
Can imagine. I mean, well, and this kind of confirms it for me. Thank you to Estimate for the $10 donation. This documentary reaffirmed my curiosity for the subject. What a compelling case. Thank you, James. I mean, that wraps it up right there, man. I mean, you've reaffirmed and you've solidified that this case truly deserves a place in UFO history. And it's immortalized now in film. I mean, I think we have to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank Marco Leal and all the other Brazilian researchers too, because, you know, those guys did extraordinary research in the field for much longer than me, although I worked on it for quite some time. And I think that this is, I believe in my heart, this is just the beginning. I believe you're going to see a lot more witness involvement coming forward. I'm anticipating that in the coming weeks, months, years.
Absolutely. I want to see that video. Give me that video, man. Get it.
I know. Believe me. Like I said, just if you guys don't think there's anyone on the planet that wants it more than me, you better think again.
Right. And I know there is some money involved. If anyone has any further leads, reach out to James. It's
just for the video of the Varginha ET guy, not for other video. This is the
that's fair.
For just the Varginha videotape photographic evidence.
There you go, guys. Don't be sending James videos of the UFO in your backyard.
Last thing, really helpful. If you guys could take a moment and rate the film on Vimeo, on iTunes, Amazon, the algorithms, it's tremendously helpful for us. If you liked it, even if you don't like it, but if you like it, particularly, please rate it.
Yep. Huge. It helps independent filmmakers so much, guys. Get it up there. Get it featured on all of these platforms. It truly deserves to be seen. So, James, man, I know you got to get going. You've got other interviews. You've got a full day ahead of you. So I will let you go. I'm going to debrief with the audience here for just a little bit. But last question, we've got your Twitter handle below. I just showed where the movie is available, but not question, but any last words you want to give the audience before we let you go here?
Yeah, just know that I'm constantly updating everybody on Twitter as often as I can. There's more things to come, I'm told, in within the next 48 hours. So sit tight, and I'll post it on Twitter.
Amazing. Next 48 hours, guys. It's going to be an exciting time.
Fingers crossed. Highly probable. Yes.
I love it. Awesome, my man. I will let you go. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Somewhere in the Skies podcast is part of the Lionsgate Sound Network. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever possible. Thank you for listening.
I'm Ryan Sprague.
And I'm Andrew Sanford.
And we love pro wrestling.
It's the best.
Headlocks, elbow drops,
scathing promos, and chair shots.
We just can't get enough of it. So we started a podcast.
You can join Ryan and me as we dig into the ins and outs of pro wrestling like the rabid fans we are.
We've got interviews, previews, predictions, news, and so much more. And we're going to cover all of it on Somewhere in the Ring.
Oh, yeah.
Is that supposed to be Macho Man?
No good.
We'll work on it. Join us every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts, for all new episodes. And we'll see you somewhere in the ring.
Somewhere in the Ring is part of the E1 Podcast Network.